What's happening, guys? Today I want to touch a little on how important it is to collect data and use that to make informed decisions in regards to where you take your athletes' programming. Being able to test and retest across different points in time using the same methods gives you such valuable, insightful data into how your athlete's doing at a snapshot in multiple different times. A great example of this that I like to use in my own clients' program is power testing. One of my favorite movements for power testing is a trap bar deadlift. One of the reasons I like using a trap bar deadlift is that it has a relatively low skill component compared with something like a power clean or a hang snatch, which are a little bit more complex, but also if you haven't performed those in a while, they're probably going to feel a little bit more sort of out of groove when compared with something just basically a simple squat hinge, sort of like a trap bar deadlift. As you could imagine, with such big changes in the actual season for the athlete, with pre-season being much more about building athletic capabilities, building some robustness into that system, getting them prepared and upregulating their body's ability to handle the duress that a season would provide them with, compared to actually in season where competing is your main focus, performing on field, and ideally the maintenance of all the quality you spend all this time building over here in the preseason. But at the same time, increasing on those outputs isn't really the focus, and you can't really dictate too much energy towards that when the competition is the main goal. Some of the factors that I like to look for from this data and use to help sort of educate my next step of where we're going to be taking and what we might modify in their programming is the athlete getting enough strength and power work to be able to maintain these outputs? Are they potentially opening themselves up to a little bit of injury with a massive decrease in their strength levels? What's the sort of optimal amount of volume for this specific athlete to maintain their outputs for both strength, power, and movement ability? Are they actually improving on any of the outputs for these movements? While you may not get super clear, concise answers for these questions, any light being shed on any of them is always beneficial. The more data, context you can draw from it, and therefore sort of extrapolations from that, the better you're educated on how you're going to be taking that next step in your programming. I'm going to give you a bit of an in-depth analysis here with one of my actual athletes that we've performed some trap bar power testing with this previous week. Whilst the times between these are a little longer than I'd like, with the last testing being completed about September and now these ones being completed in June, obviously a gap of about sort of 9 and a bit months. As this athlete's had quite an extensive off season with competing throughout that time as well, we never really got to sort of scale back on the sporting skill and really double down on the weight room. So it's been a bit of a grind in the background sort of type vibe through the preseason into the actual season. So they may not have got as much attention as they like, but nonetheless, this information is still really pivotal and has given me some good insight into where we need to take our training and what we can improve on and what the athlete might actually be missing in their sort of week to week for optimal performance overall. Let's jump over to that. So as you can see here, I've got my client doing some max intensity, max velocity trap bar deadlifts. So really just trying to focus on driving that weight up as fast as he can. As you can see here, we're climbing weights progressively. One of the main sort of things that we're looking for here is using the same loads that we've used previously for our past testing. So obviously using the same numbers makes so much sense because we're getting the same metrics to compare and it's just an accurate comparison. So here we have moving up to the top range, and that's about his top there. And now moving over to the graph. So these are the two graphs of his previous testing on the left and his current testing we've performed recently on the right. So quite interesting here, which you can see the graph has changed quite massively. The biggest sort of extrapolation from this is that my athlete has been lacking a little in his sort of mid-weight power. So you can see that anything in the sort of 100 to 120 kilo range has dropped off quite substantially here. Both his sort of 80 kilo performance and his 150, 160 kilo performance have actually held quite steady. Ironically, his 150 kilo performance has actually improved here. So that would suggest to me that maybe his first session might have been a little bit of an outlier and hadn't really performed very quality repetitions at those higher loads, or maybe he might have been a little bit taxed from a previous session, but we're still moving the weights fast. So on the lighter weights, that soreness, fatigue, or the like may not have been noticeable as he was moving them quite fast, but then when he got to the high ones, they were a little bit subpar of what he could actually express. This is a great example of how the data isn't conclusive in itself. It always should be taken in a bit of a vacuum. You need to apply context to the information you're getting here. That being said, you can obviously see there's a pretty big change between the two. So whilst on-field performances have held steady, top weights have been moving really well, i.e. he actually hit a heavier trap bar deadlift at a better speed. His 160 kilo trap bar was actually faster than his 150 last time. So it's interesting. The power may have gone down, but the actual force he's outputting has held very steady and may have almost even improved there a little. So it's all information to be used. So where would I take this with this athlete? Essentially what I'll be looking for here is to implement a little bit more sort of mid-weight power, i.e. maybe some trap bar jumps for something like a 60 to 70 kilo sort of performance there, really trying to up-regulate to express that strength in a really fast environment, turning it into quality power, as his strength is held steady, so there's no real decrease there. At the lighter loads, he's still moving them relatively quickly, so I would say we don't need to put a huge focus on that. But nonetheless, it's midway through the season. He's exactly smack bang in the middle of his season, so it's not a huge red flag. Like it's something to be taken and addressed, but I'm not sweating it. He's performing amazingly on field, he's healthy, he's available every week. Those are all the sort of the main things I'm looking for first. Once those have all been ticked off, okay, cool. Now we can maybe look at changing your weight room up a little, implementing a little bit more of this. But like with anything, you want to start to drip feed. If he's gone from doing no power work or very minimal sort of amounts there other than just his own sport and some strength work, if we just go to doing 5x5 trap bar deadlift jumps with another 3x5 heavy trap bar deadlifts, that's going to be a lot. That's probably going to have him quite sore, and that big spike in load is what we really want to avoid. Implementing something maybe like a 3x3 or a lower volume overall, but still giving him more time and ability to activate those sort of higher power outputs and touch on the expression of those skills that he might not be getting is exactly what we want. Given we still have about 8 to 10 weeks until finals time, I'm not worried in any sense of the word. Keeping him healthy, available for selection, and performing on field is the #1 goal. Everything stems back from that. Hopefully you guys have taken something from this, a bit of an insight into how I collect data, what I use it for, and a real life example of what I've seen in some data collection that I've done this previous week. If this sort of video interests you on a bit more of the coaching side and methodology, reach out down below. Let me know if there's anything you want me to specifically touch on or you want to see. Always happy to keep you guys being informed, leveling up, learning, and yeah, want to help as best I can. Really appreciate all the support. Jump down below, share the vid, subscribe, like, all the above. All awesome, all really appreciated. Until next time, keep lifting, keep training.